Hello guys, welcome back to another episode here on European Confessions. There is a message that I want to share with you guys, and this message, it comes from a translation of a message that I received. The message reads like this: Hello my brother, how are you? Can you please post my story as hidden identity? I am a man who is aged 49 years old. My story, it goes on like this. The rituals that I did, my brother, it ended up with me losing my wife. I lost my wife. This was last year in August. And since I lost my wife, there are a lot of things that have been happening to me. Before I had lost my wife, I used to receive some spiritual warnings, and I just thought that maybe there was one of my relatives who was bewitching me, because by me going and visiting a lot of white garment prophets, I had been told that in our family there was someone who felt really jealous because of the things that were happening in my life after I had managed to get here to South Africa. So I truly believed, and each and every time when I would be praying, I would always say those dangerous prayer against my relatives, because I was believing that there was someone who was bewitching me. My story, it started when I was still back in the village. Me and my wife, we were really poor. Life was not taking us anywhere. Me and my wife, we used to have a small vegetable garden, and we had our own orange orchard. So each and every time when it would be harvesting time for us to harvest our oranges, there were people that would come so that they can buy the oranges from us. And when it was not the time for us to harvest the oranges, we used to have that small vegetable garden. It was really small. The money that we was earning, it was not even enough. Our kids, when they would be going to school, they would tell us that they are just going to school, but they are going to be kicked out of school. We would just tell them that it is far much better that they go to school. So that was when we received the great news there in the capital city in Harare. One of our auntie, she had this other family who were about to move to the UK. They were moving out to the UK as the whole family, including their old father. They didn't want to leave anyone behind. So they wanted someone who was going to take care of their home. So after that woman had given that request at church, after church, that was when my auntie approached that woman and told that woman about me and my wife, the way that we were suffering. That woman, she was hesitant at first, because she said that she wanted someone whom she knew. She wanted someone who was from the same church. But our auntie, she was very persistent. Our auntie then rushed back to the village and collected me. The next time I found myself, I was in the city. She then took me to those people's home, and they started speaking with me. And when they were speaking with me, they said it is fine. They wanted to do a test run on me. They said that I was going to become their gardener until they would have migrated to the UK. That is when they would come out with a decision. All that they wanted was a caretaker who was going to take care of their house when they were there in the United Kingdom, since they were moving there permanently, but they still wanted to have that property there in Zim for future investments, because they had this house in the rich suburbs there in Harare. So I started working for those people, and as someone who grew up in the village and as someone who was into farming, it was quite easy for me to migrate from agriculture and working as a gardener. And they were really impressed, because when I started working, I started planting several vegetables. They were not even buying vegetables at all, even tomatoes, because I was planting those tomatoes for them. They were really impressed. And after their papers and the visas were out, and when it came time for them to move to the UK, they told me that I was free to stay with them at their family. They told me that I was free to take my children, my wife, so that I can stay with her. And they said that, in fact, I should not even stay at the cottage, and we used to call it the garden boy room. So they said that we want you to stay in the main room. Then they gave me the keys, and they said that each and every month they will be giving me my salary. They will be sending my salary from the UK, as well as the money that I would be using throughout the month. This was like a blessing from God. I quickly rushed and I went and I took my wife in the village and our kids. And that is how me and my kids and my wife started staying in the city. Life was really good. Even when they went to UK on the night, we actually went with them to the airport, and life was really good. It was like the first time for me to ever visit an airport. When they went to the UK, I continued working really hard, but now I didn't have a boss. I was like my own boss. As someone who really enjoyed drinking beer, usually after working I would go so as to hang around with other gardeners from that same area. That was when a lot of those gardeners started giving me a lot of ideas. The first idea that I got, it was from my new friend whom I was now friend with in that same area that I was now working and staying as the caretaker of that house. He told me that a lot of people, they were in need of accommodation. If I could make a plan, he was going to find some people for me so that they can start staying at that property that I was staying. He said that you can even have 4 tenants, each and everyone having their own room. Usually, if you can get students, those ones, they are the good ones because they do not come with a lot of property. You will just manage them and they will be sharing the kitchen and using the property that is in that room. So with that plan, my brother, it seemed to be a very spectacular plan, and each and every month we will be giving each other the enough share, and he was like an agent who was going to look for the clients so that they can stay at that house that the people had entrusted me with. And in no time after I had spoken with my wife and she agreed, then we started looking for people who could come and start staying at that house where I was working as a caretaker. We then found people and they started staying. And you know what human beings are like. At the first, when they start staying with you, you can control them, but with time, you find yourself being in a lot of trouble, not being able to control them. That is what was happening until word got out and our neighbors started to notice that there was a lot of movement. And one thing about wealthy people, they do not want a lot of crowded people in their neighborhood, people that they do not even know. And in that area, having that type of accommodation whereby you'll be renting out a lot of rooms, it was not allowed because you had to apply first. They didn't even allow illegal structures. So when the neighbors started to notice that this is what was happening, they then contacted the people who had hired me, those ones that were in the UK, and they were really angry because they sent one of their relative and they said that this was like my first warning. So I then kicked everyone out and I just wanted to concentrate on my job. But these people, it was like they didn't trust me at all because I then went to this other town. It is called Chitungwiza. I just went there for some other prayers. Whilst I was there receiving the prayers, there was a prophetess who said that she had seen that soon enough I was going to suffer because I was going to get fired. She then said that if I was willing, she could give me some prayers so as to soften the heart of my bosses, those ones that were in the UK. I was given some prayers. So I did these prayers for 3 days and washing myself with the water, the holy water. On the 3rd day, that was when I received the bad news because a nephew of my bosses came and told me that my boss had said that they wanted to fire me and they wanted one of their relative to come and stay because they were not trusting me. I really got scared and I saw that these prayers that I was doing, they were not going to work. I needed something that was really powerful. I then approached this other man. I had known him in that same area. He was also a gardener. His father came from Malawi. I then spoke with him and I said, Apiri, can you please assist me because I know that people from Malawi, they are really powerful. I do not want to get fired. And then said that he was going to speak with one of his uncles, but we needed money. I needed to give him money so that he can travel to the village. I said, money I have, but I was afraid that since he was a man who loved drinking beer, if I was going to give him the money, then he was going to drink the beer. He was going to use that money to drink the beer. I said, Apiri, I am going to travel with you because he wanted to go to a village called Murewa. So me and him, we both got onto the bus and we went to his village where the uncle was at. And when I arrived there, I saw that this man, indeed, he was from Malawi and he was willing to assist me, and he assisted me. So what he did is that, you know, there are those porcupines, those animals that have a lot of thorns. He then took those thorns, some of them, the smaller ones, he placed them inside a very small bottle, and inside that small bottle, there was some oil that was in there. Each and every time when I would be speaking with my boss, even over the phone, I had to use that Lucky Charm oil. And the horns, he said that those thorns that he had given me that once belonged to a porcupine, they were going to chase away all of my enemies. If there was anyone who wanted to come and replace me so that they can become a caretaker, those thorns from a porcupine were going to chase them away. So after he had given me everything, he just wanted to assist me, but I needed to thank his ancestors, and his ancestors didn't require money. All that they wanted was a chicken, and if I could get a black cock, it was going to be good. And he said that he didn't want money. So we returned back to the city, and I had planned that if this thing was going to work out, I would return back to the village so that I can thank him. But as human beings, my brother, once everything that you want is okay, then you will forget about those people that assisted you. So when my life started moving in the right direction, I then forgot about that man who had assisted me. I then started living my life, not even caring if he was still thinking about that issue or not. Because my boss, one day when I was speaking with him, I was using that oil. On that day, my lady boss, she had called me. She just wanted to confirm something. I then rushed and I took that small bottle that had the porcupine thorns as well as the oil, and I started rubbing that oil on my mouth and on my forehead. And even the response that she gave me after speaking with me, it was a response which I saw that, yes, those charms were working. Because after dropping the call, she then sent me a text message, and she said that, yes, she had been thinking about firing me because of my dishonesty, but she was feeling like the Holy Spirit had been speaking with her so that she can forgive me, and she had forgiven me. But this was my final warning. I was really happy, my brother, and I made sure that I never do any mistake again. It was only after my boss lady's husband had passed away, we then started to experience a season whereby sometimes she would not send the money in time, and already my kids, they were in good schools, left with no choice. That was when I left their house. I then left my wife back in Zim. She was renting somewhere else, and when I came here, I then started working. I really have a good job, so I was still able to take care of my wife. So whilst me and my wife were busy shifting the property from that house which we were caretakers, going to the place where I wanted to leave my wife, and at the room where she was going to be renting, whilst I was coming here to South Africa, I think I made an error because I tried to search for that small container that had the thorns of a porcupine as well as the oil, but I could not find it. I searched for it and I searched for it. I then said that it does not matter anymore, because already in South Africa there was someone who had promised me that as soon as I would get to South Africa I was going to get hired. So I was not in no need of using charms anymore against my lady boss. I then came to South Africa and forgot about everything. My brother, I was making a lot of money. Then I sent my wife some money so that she can come and join me. When she came here, that was when I started to receive like spiritual warnings about me going back to that man so that I can pay him that chicken that he wanted. When I returned back to the city, usually, you know, people from Malawi who came to Zim, they do not have a lot of relatives. So I was relying on that man whom I used to work in that same area with, who was a gardener. So I went there trying to search for him so that he can return with me back to the village so that I can speak with his uncle. But he had already moved out of that neighborhood and no one even knew where he had gone to. So I said, so how am I going to repay this man? I then visited another traditional healer who did some some rituals for me. We took a black chicken and we went with that black chicken and we threw it into the river. His idea was that by me throwing that black chicken into the river, then the chicken was going to find its way back to that man who had assisted me if he was still alive. So I was really satisfied and I returned back to South Africa. When I came back here, my brother, then it was bad luck after bad luck until my wife fell sick. When my wife fell sick, that was when people told me that there was someone in our family, amongst our relatives, who was performing all of these rituals against me. So I started to find those red garment prophets so that they can assist me, but it was not working at all. Then my wife got really sick and I got that energy again to start visiting some traditional healers. There was a traditional healer who told me that the only thing that we could do if my wife was being used by my relatives, we could remove that spirit from her body and place that spirit on one of my relatives' child. That traditional healer said that we needed a child that was really young, someone that was below 10 years of age, and there was someone who was perfect for that. There was one of my cousin brothers who was the main one who hated my wife a lot. I then picked his daughter and I wanted the daughter to suffer. So we then did that energy transfer, transferring that spirit that was making my wife to suffer into the life of my cousin brother's daughter. And after that, my wife, she recovered for a brief period of time. And then I heard the news that my cousin brother's daughter, she was really sick, but they acted really quickly since they were there in Zim. They visited some prophets, those ones that do go back to sender. That arrow that they sent back to me, it was really powerful. And my wife, she never stood any chance. My wife, she died whilst we were here in South Africa. I struggled so much, my brother, because when she died in hospital, everything that I would do so as to try to get her body out of the mortuary, it was really difficult because she came here without any documentation. Other people, yes, they come here without any documentation, but once you die, the process is not very difficult. There are just some fines that are needed to be paid. But as for my wife, we struggled. I do not know how many funeral homes that I approached. They all tried. Yes, they tried, but they would just tell you that this story is a long story. We can't assist you. But finally, we managed to get my wife back to Zim. But on her funeral, a lot of confusion was happening. Her relatives were really angry at me. There was one point that I thought of running away, but I just wanted to pay my wife the last respects and to bury her with dignity. So even though they were insulting me, I just sat there not knowing what to do. I then returned back to South Africa, my brother, where I am currently working. And each and every time when I think about that Lucky Charm bottle which was given to me and the one that I do not even know where it is, and when I hear stories like those stories that I usually hear on